Hello and welcome to All Indians Matter. I am Ashraf Engineer. Recently, I published an episode on the criticality of banking and financial inclusion for a strong, growing economy. While that is a multifaceted issue, one of the key barriers to financial inclusion is the astonishingly high levels of financial illiteracy in India, even among the educated. A National Center for Financial Education survey a couple of years ago found that only 27% of Indians are financially literate. Let's add further context to this. India has more than 275 million households, and an estimated 100 million households are set to become savers for the first time. They will look beyond traditional avenues such as bank fixed deposits and gold. However, lack of financial awareness is a hurdle both for them and the wider financial sector. Why is this a problem? And what are the solutions?
All Indians matter.
We have on the show Yusuf Roopawalla, Chief Information Officer at a multinational bank in India and responsible for technology delivery at the bank. In a career spanning more than 30 years, he has handled a variety of roles in the banking technology domain at both local and global levels. He has strong experience in managing large IT transformational projects across retail banking, regulatory systems, inclusive banking, internet and mobile banking, etc. Welcome to the show, Yusuf.
Hi, Ashraf, and it's a pleasure being here.
Yusuf, why is financial literacy important at the micro level?
See, financial literacy is the foundation of a relationship with money, and it's a lifelong journey. The earlier we start, the better. The education that we impart for financial literacy is very, very important. And it's no different. Education, whether you do for your own development or for money, is equally important. Now, each one of us, irrespective of our gender, education level, or wherever we live, whether in urban areas, rural areas, we need all of us to know effectively how to manage our money. This goes on right from the laborers who work on a daily wage, or for somebody who's earning money at the highest level. Financial literacy also provides, financial service providers to reach out to a population which is currently dependent on local money vendors, which is a big one, which is in India, and especially in the smaller cities and smaller villages. This gap can be closed, once we have a wider reach of financial literacy. While financial literacy, can be a life changer for the most vulnerable people in the society, for others who are at a better level, that can help bridge gap and facilitate economic mobility.
Has the COVID 19 pandemic heightened the need for it?
Yes, of course. COVID-19 pandemic has definitely heightened the need for it. I think it's important because, especially during the lockdown days, it was very difficult to people to even reach out and go out to collect money from ATMs or the banks which were open as a part of essential services. It kind of has created a lot of avenues where people have enabled payments like UPI, which can be taking money from apps like Google Pay, Bheem, etc., which allowed seamless money transfer. And the biggest thing, especially in the wave one of COVID, where physical contact was such a challenge, with the contactless payment on QR codes and UPI and even contactless cards, that has really helped, heighten the need for financial literacy and also has increased the volumes dramatically within the country.
That's right. As a banker, could you give us some examples of financial illiteracy that you're seeing every day around you?
Oh, there are many of them, and I think a few of them which I can really think of is, one is not having a financial plan. A lot of people, carry a lot of money with them, or don't have any money with them and don't have a financial plan as to how they're either going to use the money they're having or how they're going to fund their expenses if they don't have money. I think the other levels of literacy, which is kind of a bit surrogate to financial literacy, also is the cybersecurity literacy. I think because that's where, with today's digital age and world, customers many times you've seen fall prey to fraudsters who, kind of collect the internet banking credentials, other OTPs, and other kind of stuff from them and kind of defraud them. So that literacy also is something very, very important for everybody. So financial literacy, the cybersecurity aspect going with it, and then finally it also drops down to how you manage your own devices, which is including your mobile phones, your PCs, and stuff like that, because they all are linked into together.
That's right. And we are seeing so much of this kind of news that you mentioned nowadays. At the ground level, how does all this affect the country's financial inclusion effort?
No, I think it's important because if you I think we touched upon the National Center for Financial Education. I think their survey states that about 27% of Indians are only financially literate. I think the other stat that you mentioned, that there is a potential 100 million population, which is a potential saving population. I think it is very very important that the country has a robust framework for allowing financial literacy, inclusion, and literacy across the population, that allows the country to rapidly grow its economy. And I think the government is taking a lot of efforts on it, and a lot of schemes which the government have started in the recent past, which is kind of very very useful for allowing the population to be more and more financial literate. There are products which have reached even the lower strata of the society, reached out to rural areas, even pension schemes which allow the middle class to the upper middle class to plan for the future. Schemes like the Sukanya scheme, which allows for the ladies to be younger children, women children, to be kind of investing. So there are a lot of things which are happening.
Let's flip the question, Yusuf. If we were to have high levels of financial literacy, how different would our economy look?
Yeah, I think the financial literacy will give more spending power to the people, because it's typically it's the concept of what you manage is you can measure properly. So what you measure you can manage properly, and that's a key concept which is there. So it gives you an ability to understand what exactly is where you're standing as a individual with your financial capability which you've got, which means that it gives you lesser stress and anxiety. So you've got access to a wider credit structure. Your financial goals are more you're greater equipped to reach your financial goals. So for example, you may have a goal to buy a house or a car or your children's education or get married. I think with that knowledge on financial literacy, it will definitely help you kind of grow in this area. And as individuals grow, the economy along with that kind of grows. So it becomes a consumer economy. It allows a much 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 more turnover on stuff and purchases which happens, and that's allowed the economy to grow, the manufacturing grows, and everything else follows it. So as the literacy increases, the people will be able to be in a more formal sector. They'll be able to invest, they'll be able to borrow money, and they'll be to save money in a much more contextual manner, which will be there.
Yusuf, a lot of banking today is done online. Could you explain the importance of financial literacy in this context? Now, I know you already spoken about this to some extent. You mentioned cyber fraud, cyber security, etc. But could you explain it in a little more detail?
Yeah, I think with the financial literacy is important from the sense that with online banking channels available, people need to have an understanding as to what services are available online and what is secure and what is not secure. In today's world, there is a very fine line with the way you look at something which is a real bank message, or a proper financial message, versus a fraudster who is trying to defraud you. So that's where the financial literacy comes into play. One needs to understand that in today's environment, India is one of the leading countries where it allows for a very secure money transfer across two entities, either a person to a person, or a person to a business, or a person to any bill payment services. These are always protected by multi-factor authentication in the country, and hence this literacy typically is something which is very important, which allows people to understand that the whole transmission portion is safe and secure and directly under their control. Now with financial literacy, you will be able to emphasize this much more to the individuals, so they're able to very clearly distinguish themselves from what is a right way, what is a correct way of making a payment, versus somebody fraudulently picking up a payment and then making a fraudulent transaction onto their accounts. Now that is one. Secondly, the fintechs generally will help close these kind of gaps. There are today companies which offer a wide range of services to meet the financial literacy challenges which are there in the country. I think that is something also which is very very important. But yeah, overall, I think financial literacy is the one which will allow you to understand what services are available. That is one. Two is how you can make the most of the services which is available on online channels, especially through mobile banking, which is available on the go. Three is it will help you distinguish between what is the right kind of a payment, what is a which is a kind of a fraudulent payment or a fraudster who's trying to squeeze out money from you. Three is, I think, finally it is in terms of the different avenues by which you can make payments. So you don't need to go into stuff like making bill payments. You don't need to stand in queues at merchants. You can make payment at even at a 1 rupee, 10 rupee level directly through a QR code and a UPI application. So that's, I think, important that financial literacy can allow you to do a lot of banking capabilities on an online channel today.
And are banks or the financial services sector as a whole doing anything to grow financial literacy levels?
No, I think banks are playing their part. So I think there is a considerable amount of population in the country is salaried. So the banks, obviously, though that's a more of an educated, community which is there, which understands what financial literacy is all about. But I think, yeah, if you take that stature of the population, the more and more digitized it gets, and more non-touch banking is there, that the banks enable that in several organizations, especially the human resources team work with the finance department to help their workforce in this regard, and especially in times of COVID when there was a lot of financial stress, productivity was impacted, so organizations are doing their bit. uh, Banks themselves are reaching out. There are banks which operate a lot in the rural areas where they help people with the banking capability. uh, you know Even today, with the 2015 digitization of the Jandan Yojana and everything else which has happened in the country, that's kind of created a surge in understanding and literacy amongst population on financial literacy, which is there.
Many experts like you have been saying that financial literacy should become part of the school syllabus, that the effort should start early. Talk us through that.
Oh, that's this is one of the closest topics to my heart. I think because my feeling is that today our curriculum definitely has a room to improve and add more on financial literacy. We are taught all subjects like maths, geography, history, literature, and stuff, so on. Then why not finance? Why not money? Selectively few courses are available at in higher standards, where people are given today choice to choose between financial subjects or science subjects which are there. But I think it is not fair, a commerce or a science subject. It's a common topic covering across the board. So it's important that at least some, if not a full subject, workshops are organized, knowledge is transferred to children on how to manage their money. That's very important. When you look at money, primarily when I look at money, I look at it in three or four ways. One is I look at it as payments, which you primarily do to give it to somebody or receive it from somebody. Two is looking at saving, and third is looking at growing your money, which is your wealth management, and finally looking at it as a more of a future, which is your retirement. I think all of these can be touched, each one of them in a selective way to nurture the younger minds who are there. And I think the earlier they start, they'll be much better control, of the finance, and how they have a life for themselves with whatever resources are available with them.
Yeah, I think those are very critical points actually. And within this wide financial literacy umbrella, what are the specific topics that you would like to see being taught in school? I know you've spoken already about the four large umbrellas, but within those, are there any subtopics that you would like to mention?
Yeah, and again, come back to the. I think one of the key topics is on the fraud management, the risk management of money, which is involved. So that's very important. I think the topics have to be taught in a manner where children are encouraged to understand what it is. I'll give an example. It's if today parents give pocket money to their children once they reach an age of maybe 10, 12, 15, whatever. There's a mobile phone already available with a kid. Now, how can the parents enable the child at a very early age on giving them the money digitally? Like, for example, when my son started growing, I just gave him a digital account and a digital card. And then that's all was the pocket money from him. So then he started, understanding the whole skill of how do I walk out to an ATM, how do I plan my day, how much money I need, because at this age they really don't plan their day so well. So these are the things which is very important for people to start enabling their children at a very very early age, and of course supporting them. It's not just giving it to them and leaving you on their own. They will fail, they will struggle, and you have to support them at all points of time. But that's a very very important thing which needs to be done at parents level to help the child grow and pick up financial skills, which is very very important here.
I think very few would argue with you when you say that financial literacy should be included at a very early age when children are being taught. But would it be tough to include a subject like that in the syllabus at a time when the country is struggling to impart even basic education to all?
And I think that's a fair comment, Ashraf. And I think that's important that yeah, education is mandatory. I don't think there is any two ways to it. I think it's important that education, every child in the country gets educated. I think if it is made a part of the curriculum, then there's no reason why it cannot be taught along with the education which is given to the children. I'm not saying that you only teach financial literacy and don't educate the child. I think you need to both needs to go hand in hand together as subjects. I think it's obviously today with a lot of technology, a lot of digital channels available. It's how we leverage that, how the mindset changes, and how the children also are very fast learners today. So one thing very important that we all know is that no matter what stature of life you are at, at whatever age you are, you know, uh, you know. Uh, you spatially know how much money you need and how you count. So that is something that comes naturally to anybody. Uh, that's important. That's a necessity which has brought it up. And I think the education can only round it off better. It can polish it better, the individual, how he or she carries and manages the funds which are available at whatever level that they've got with them. And that's important. It's a tough question to do, where you I don't think it's a choice. It's not either you can do normal education or financial education. I think you need to do both. I think that's how I would say it would go through.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Are banks reaching out to the education sector to help them sort of craft a financial literacy syllabus?
No, so I think the banks definitely are playing the bit. There's a lot of CSR going on. Banks are reaching out to different places where they can actually train people on basic financial literacy. They guide their customers. They are doing that bit. And I think the national strategy for financial education also is whatever the 5C career approach which they've got, that is helping it move forward. Yeah.
Actually, we don't find many parents talking to their children about money and its management. That's something that you've also spoken about earlier. How big a barrier is that? You think that's something that parents should actively do now?
Yeah, I think as for the barrier itself, I think it's with the newer generation. I think that barrier is reducing. I think today, I think as the Gen Y and Gen Z are coming in, the generation gap between the parents and the children is kind of reducing. That's my belief. Uh, I think the other important thing is that yeah, it's important that like any other key mature topics in life, parents need to have conversations with their children on money management. That's very very important. I think today is more of a spending society that we've got than a saving society. So that there are children and parents who got enough money to spend. I think it's important that this is kind of understood well by the children, and it's not taken in a literal manner that there's a source which is giving the money and there's a source which there's an individual who keep on spending. I think it's important that parents counsel their children, show them the value of money, show them the importance of it, and that they can do in various ways. They can themselves counsel the children. They can pick up some videos, courses which are available online which can help guide them. I think conversations like anything on mature topics that you have with children are important, and that will help children understand and value the money and management of it as they move forward.
Yusuf, let's break down any person's life into various stages. You just become an adolescent, you first start getting, let's say, pocket money, or your first exposure to handling money happens. Um, you then start working. Later on, you have a settled life. Maybe you have children, then you're matured in your career, and finally you retire. It's different kinds of financial literacy that comes into play at each stage, doesn't it? So, what role does it play?
No, it again plays very, very important role. So I think the first thing is, and I think these are the early years, maybe below 20, under 20, or maybe under 25, is very important that one understands, gathers knowledge on financial literacy, and keeps oneself upgraded in terms of what avenues and what options are available for all the different things which I mentioned earlier: payments, savings, wealth growth, and future planning for maybe your retirement. So this theoretical knowledge is very, very important, that needs to be gathered in the early stages of life, and I think very important, if it is gathered once before one starts making money and earning them. Then I think as you start, you finish your studies and you start getting your first job and start working towards it, I think you this is where you need to establish your financial goals. You will have, and at a younger age you have a lot of ambitions in mind. You may want to buy a high end phone, or you want to buy a vehicle for yourself, or you may even want to buy a house for yourself. So that's where the understanding as to how goal based saving can be done, how goal based investment can be done, and how much money you can extrapolate to, you know gather after a certain period of time, so you can reach your goal. So if you have a goal for, say, another 3 years, you want to buy a car, then today there are a lot of tools available which allows you to plan that and see how you can reach that goal. I think if you do goal based investment, then that's something which will always help you in terms of achieving your goals, especially expensive ones in life. So that's I would say, from a early working days to about 10-15 years of experience, is something which you always do. But at the same time, you also start saving money, which helps you for potential children in the future, their education and their needs. And then, when you move to a much, much mature state, say an age between 35 to 50, you start having much more understanding in terms of how much money you need, how much you need to save for retirement. So you start continuing to build your financial base, and you are continuing to also stay track of your goals. That's when you'll think of items like emergency funds, which will come to your mind. Hey, what happens if somebody's sick and I need money? How will you manage it? And you keep on fine tuning your goals and the money you're saving and spending. So that's where I would say, at that age, it will come in. Once you're closer to your above 50, and at maybe at 60 or 65 you're retiring, you start really planning for that. How much money will I have? How will I live my rest of my life without a drop in my standard of living? And that's where I touched a bit earlier also, that it's important that that you have enough money and you don't drop your standard of living. It's that's where it's important to know how you invest your money correctly after you retire. And then finally, once you retire, I think you start living a controlled life. You have a clear view of the money available with you, and how do you plan and how do you want to deliver it. I think also important is that, at that stage you also have to plan what will you do post you are not there. So whether you want to make a will, you want to nominate somebody. So all these things are really different stages of financial literacy in one's life. Of course, there are different variables which are associated with, but that's what I think is the one which is there.
So, Yusuf, here's a question I ask all my guests at the end of the conversation. Why do you do this work?
I think the satisfaction that comes from making somebody financial literate, who's not really understanding money, not understanding banking, and to make them happy, to see that their money is safe and secure. That's a thrill which is I think very good. I give an example, especially in the COVID lockdown days, we actually encouraged our mate that we will transfer money to your account, and then you walk to your nearest ATM and pick it up. So don't need to come. And I think that's something which really kept her going, her family going during the period of difficult days of COVID, because the money came to her, and she could leverage it. And I think that has become a practice now. We've kind of just moved on to online money transfer to her. She gets the money, she saves some whatever portion she can, and then she utilizes it. So that's very, very important. I think there obviously there's no limit to it. You can still move forward. You can help her with insurance, medical insurance. You can help her with stuff like online payments using mobile. But these things slowly will pick up. I think it's important. And I think my belief is that in a city like Bombay, if each household does at least for one or two people, you imagine that this will then go and replicate further down to their families when they reach their villages, and it goes on. So it is a multiplier effect that we all can do. That's something which is very important.
Yusuf, thanks so much for these very important insights on what should be a priority but isn't talked about much. Thank you all for listening. Please visit allindiansmatter.in, that's ALLINDIANSMATTER.in, for more columns and audio podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Ashraf Engineer, that's ASHRAFENGINER, and All Indians Count, that's ALLINDIANSCOUNT. Search for the All Indians Matter page on Facebook. On Instagram, the handle is All Indians Matter. Email me at editor@allindiansmatter.in. Catch you again soon.